The wind cut through Boston like a knife, biting into every corner of the city with sharp November teeth. Sidewalks shimmered with patches of frost. People rushed past each other, heads low, faces hidden beneath scarves and heavy coats. No one had time to stop. No one had time to care. But Nora Hart always made time. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't famous. She wasn't anyone the world noticed. But she was someone who noticed the world. She noticed the way leaves curled under the weight of ice. She noticed how old men carried heavy bags with no one offering help. And most of all, she noticed animals, especially the forgotten ones. Nora, a white woman in her early 30s, worked 6 days a week as a veterinary assistant. Her uniform smelled like dog shampoo and disinfectant. Her hands were often sore from scrubbing cages, her back aching from bending over injured cats, and her pockets were usually close to empty. But her smile, always full. That morning, the sky was a steel gray, the kind of sky that promised snow but didn't deliver. As she walked to work with her coffee in one hand and a tattered canvas bag over her shoulder, she heard a small whimper. A dog, thin, shaking, one leg lifted in pain, limped slowly across the slush-covered street. "Oh no," Nora breathed, setting her coffee down on the edge of the curb. She stepped carefully into the road, waving at cars to slow down. Her breath rose in clouds as she knelt beside the dog. It looked like a beagle mix, its fur matted and tail tucked tightly beneath its body. "It's okay," she whispered. "I've got you now." The dog whimpered again, but didn't move away. Somehow it trusted her. Just as she reached to lift it, a sleek white car, clearly expensive, the kind that belonged in a showroom, pulled up beside her. The door opened with a soft click. "Need help?" a voice asked. Nora looked up, blinking against the wind. The man stepping out of the car didn't match the neighborhood. He didn't belong to the early morning chill. He wore a tailored navy coat, polished boots, and gloves made of soft black leather. His jawline was sharp, his expression unreadable. She hesitated. "I'm fine," she replied, brushing dirt from her jeans. But the man didn't listen. He moved closer, crouching down beside her without a word. His phone was still in his hand, buzzing with texts and emails, but he ignored it. "Here," he said gently, sliding his coat off his shoulders and draping it over the dog like a blanket. "Poor guy must be freezing." She blinked. "You're going to ruin your coat." "It's just a coat," he said, "but that's a life." Something in the way he said it caught her off guard. She stared at him a second longer than she meant to. "I'm Weston Hale," he added, glancing at her with a curious smile. "And you just became the most interesting part of my week." Nora's heart skipped, not because he was handsome, not because his name sounded familiar, but because no one had ever said something like that to her, not while she was knee-deep in slush, covered in dog hair, and holding a hurt animal in her arms. She smiled politely. Nora Hart. "Nice to meet you, Nora Hart," he said, standing and pulling out his phone. "Let me drive you. That dog needs care." "I can carry him," she said. "I know you can," he replied, "but you don't have to." Something about the way he said it made her pause. For years, Nora had done things alone. She didn't ask for help. She didn't expect kindness. But something about Weston Hale felt different. She finally nodded. "All right." Inside the car, the heat was warm and the silence comfortable. Nora held the dog in her lap as Weston drove, stealing glances at her when she wasn't looking. "Are you a vet?" he asked. "Vet assistant," she answered. "Not quite the same. Sounds more important to me." She looked at him, surprised. Most people saw her job as just cleaning up after animals. Not Weston. "I try to help where I can," she said. He nodded. "So do I." When they reached the clinic, Nora carefully carried the dog inside. Weston followed, ignoring curious glances from staff. She moved with care, her hands steady and gentle, whispering to the dog as she cleaned its wounds. Weston watched her the whole time, not like a man impressed, but like a man moved. When she finally turned around, he was still there. "I should go," he said, glancing at his buzzing phone. "You probably have a million things to do," Nora said. "I do," he replied, "but I'd rather stay here." She didn't know what to say. No one ever stayed. Not her father, not her first boyfriend, not the friends who left when life got hard. Why? She asked softly. He smiled. Because for once, this feels like the right place to be. And as he walked out, he turned to her one last time. I'll be back tomorrow. She didn't know it then, but Weston Hale would keep his promise. And that moment, frozen in the cold morning air, with a broken dog and two strangers who shouldn't have met, would be the beginning of a love that would shake everything. A love no one saw coming. A love the world would try to tear apart. Days passed since that cold morning with the stray dog, but Weston Hale kept coming back. At first he said it was to check on the dog, Charlie as Nora had named him, but Nora noticed something deeper in his visits. He never stayed just 5 minutes. He stayed longer than necessary. He always asked how she was doing, not just the dog. How's your day been? He'd ask, leaning on the front desk, wearing another perfect coat. Same as yesterday, she'd reply with a grin. Dog hair, dirty shoes, and too much coffee. Sounds like heaven. He didn't care that the room smelled like animals. He didn't care that Nora's hair was always in a messy bun or that her scrubs had a stain from a puppy's accident. Weston Hale, a millionaire with a corner office in the tallest building downtown, kept finding reasons to stop by a tiny animal clinic, just to see her. At first, Nora thought he was bored, or just being polite. But then he asked her favorite book, her favorite childhood memory, what kind of music she liked, whether she believed in soulmates. You ask a lot of questions, she said one day, raising an eyebrow. I like answers, he replied, his eyes soft. And she gave them. She told him how she grew up on a farm in rural Vermont, how she'd bottle-fed lambs and helped deliver calves before sunrise, how she missed it, missed the sound of wind through wheat fields, the smell of hay after a storm. She told him about her mom dying when she was young, how her father had tried, but the grief made him hard. And Weston listened, not the way people pretend to listen. He really listened. He asked about her favorite animals, why she loved foxes, why she wore a tiny ring on her pinky finger that didn't fit any other finger. He laughed when she teased him about his expensive shoes. Those things don't even bend, she said once, nudging them with her boot. They're Italian, he replied. So, my boots are from the thrift store, and they can outrun yours any day. Their friendship grew like a quiet flame, slow, steady, warm. Then came the fundraiser. Weston invited her to his estate, not as a date, but as a friend. It was a snowy December evening. The sky hung low with soft clouds. Snowflakes began to fall, delicate and slow. I don't fit in with rich people, she whispered on the drive there. You fit in wherever I am, he answered. That night his mansion glowed with fairy lights. The driveway was lined with ice sculptures. Waiters offered wine and champagne. Everyone was dressed like they'd stepped off a movie set. And then there was Nora, wearing a borrowed coat and an old dress she found at a vintage shop. She thought she'd feel out of place, but the second Weston walked beside her, offering his arm, none of it mattered. He introduced her to CEOs, politicians, and investors, not as my guest, but as someone Nora didn't expect him to say it. Will you marry me? His voice had been soft, almost like a question to himself. Snowflakes clung to his hair, melting gently on his eyelashes. His breath came out in white clouds, nervous and real. She let out a small, surprised laugh. Weston, she said, her cheeks flushed, you don't even know me. I know what I feel, he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. And what I feel isn't temporary. That night should have been a fairy tale, a dreamy, snow-covered memory, sealed with a kiss and a whisper of forever. But real life doesn't wait for fairy tales to finish. Nora couldn't sleep after that night, not because she was scared of love, but because she was scared of being known, truly known. Not just the woman who rescued dogs and smiled through her exhaustion. Not just the sweet girl in the old boots. She carried things, dark things, buried so deep even she tried to forget. And now with Weston so close, she feared the world would dig it all up. She was right. 2 weeks later it happened. A tabloid headline screamed across newsstands, "Millionaire's new girlfriend hides shocking past." Underneath it were grainy photos of Nora, one of her being led away by police in her early 20s. Another, even worse, a picture of her father holding a hateful protest sign decades ago. The article didn't care about truth. It didn't care that Nora had been trying to protect her best friend from an abusive ex when that fight broke out in a parking lot. It didn't mention that the charges were dropped. It didn't say she spent her youth volunteering at shelters or that she spent every Christmas helping the homeless. They only printed what would sell. Suddenly, Nora wasn't a kind-hearted vet assistant. She was dangerous. Trash from nowhere. A stain on Weston Hale's polished image. She felt the change instantly. Strangers stared. Phones clicked behind her back. A woman in the grocery store muttered, "Shameful," loud enough for Nora to hear. And Weston? He showed up at her apartment that night, his face pale with shock. "I didn't know it would happen so fast," he said, wrapping her in his arms. "It was going to happen eventually," Nora whispered, burying her face in his chest. "I told you. You don't know everything." "I do now," he said, "and I still choose you." But not everyone felt the same. Weston's company board called an emergency meeting. Investors pulled out of upcoming projects. One executive slammed a newspaper onto the table and shouted, "This will destroy your reputation." "She'll ruin your image," they warned. "She's not the kind of woman you build a future with." "She's exactly the kind of woman I want a future with," Weston snapped. But the pressure didn't stop. He received messages from concerned friends. Clients ghosted him. Reporters followed him to his office. Some fans even created online hate groups targeting Nora. And Nora? She watched it all unfold from the shadows. She saw how tired Weston looked, how his phone never stopped ringing, how his company trembled under the weight of gossip. So one night while he was asleep on her couch, exhausted from defending her all day, she quietly packed her things. She folded a note in half, left it on the kitchen counter, and disappeared. The note said, "Weston, you've done enough. You don't need to fight my battles anymore. I won't be the reason your world falls apart. Thank you for showing me what love feels like, even if it was just for a little while. Nora." By the time Weston woke up, she was already gone. Her apartment was empty, her phone number disconnected. No one at the clinic had seen her. She had vanished like snowfall in the sun. Quiet, soft, gone without a trace. And the man who had everything? He sat alone in a silent room, staring at her note, wishing he had told her one more thing, that nothing mattered more than her. Days turned into weeks. The city lights didn't shine the same. The snow didn't feel magical anymore. The sound of his name on TV, once a sign of success, now only reminded Weston Hale of what he'd lost. Her, Nora, the woman who changed everything with a smile, a stray dog, and a kiss under the snow. Now she was gone, and Weston couldn't breathe without her. He tried to go back to normal, tried to sit through meetings, answer emails, and pretend the boardroom still mattered. But every time someone said, "We dodged a bullet," he felt like screaming. He hadn't dodged anything. He'd lost the only thing that ever made his world feel right. So he stopped pretending. He walked out of a corporate meeting mid-sentence, got in his car, and drove straight to a local news station. The producers were shocked. "Mr. Hale, you want to go live? Right now?" "Yes," he said. The cameras rolled. People across the country watched as the famous, polished tech millionaire sat in front of the world. Not with confidence, but with quiet, aching honesty. "My name is Weston Hale," he began, voice shaking slightly. "And I'm looking for a woman. Not just any woman. The woman." He paused, looking directly into the lens. "Her name is Nora Hart. She's kind, brave. She once risked her life for a dog with a broken leg. She makes coffee too strong, laughs when she's nervous, and once told me she's afraid of being loved because she doesn't think she deserves it." He took a breath. The studio was silent. "I know about her past, and I don't care." Gasps spread across living rooms, coffee shops, and cell phone screens. "I don't care if she made mistakes. I don't care where she came from. All I know is that she made me better. She made everything better, and I love her." He paused again, emotion thick in his voice. "Nora, if you see this, I'm not ashamed of you. I'm proud. Please come back, or tell me where you are, and I'll come to you. I'll cross the country if I have to." Reporters laughed afterward. One morning's show host mocked him live. "Romance or meltdown? Has Weston Hale finally lost it?" Executives panicked. But Weston, he didn't flinch. He posted the video on every platform, hired private investigators, but only with one rule: no pressure, no force. Just find her safely. He drove through towns she used to mention. He visited old animal clinics. He called her favorite bookstore in Vermont, hoping she'd walked in for a worn novel. Nothing. Until one day, 3 states away, he stopped at a tiny roadside gas station to refuel and saw a flyer pinned to the corkboard. Looking for volunteers, Heart Haven Animal Shelter. And there she was, in the photo, Nora, holding a small injured kitten, her hair pulled back, her eyes still soft. Still her. His heart slammed in his chest. He didn't wait. He drove 25 miles through quiet back roads, past snow-covered trees, fields of white, and sleepy houses. The GPS barely worked, but his heart did. He found the shelter on the edge of a small town. Paint chipping, roof rusted, but warm lights glowing inside. He stepped in. The scent of sawdust and shampoo met him. A tiny bell above the door rang, and then he saw her, Nora, wearing an oversized hoodie, mud on her boots, a bandage around her finger, and the same look of startled wonder she'd worn the day they met. Their eyes met. She dropped the food bowl in her hands. "Weston?" she whispered, voice trembling. He walked toward her, slow, careful, afraid she might run again. She didn't. Tears welled in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I told you," he said softly, "I'd find you." Her lips parted. She shook her head, tears falling freely now. "You'll lose everything. Your investors, your reputation." "I already lost everything," he said, "the moment you left." She covered her mouth with a trembling hand. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. He reached out, gently touching her cheek, wiping away a tear. "I want to." She leaned into him, her whole body shaking. "How can you still want me after everything? After the articles, the pictures, my father?" "Because," he said, pulling her closer, "you're the only thing that ever felt real." And right there, in that broken little shelter, beneath the buzzing light and the scent of dog food and hope, she fell into his arms. Not because he promised riches, not because he forgave her past, but because he saw all of her and still wanted more. And as she clung to him, crying into his chest, Weston whispered 3 words: "I'm home now." The drive back to Boston was quiet, not because they didn't have anything to say, but because everything had already been said in that hug, that shelter, that moment when she clung to him like he was the only steady thing left in her life, and maybe he was. They held hands the whole way home, his thumb tracing slow circles on her skin. She stared out the window as snow fell soft and slow, her mind racing through 100 worries she was too scared to speak. When they arrived at his condo, the city lights blinked with tension. There were already news vans outside. The headlines had changed since his live broadcast. Now they weren't just cruel, they were furious. Weston Hale finds fugitive girlfriend. Tech mogul risks empire for woman with criminal past. Love or lunacy? The world had made up its mind. Inside his condo, things weren't better. His inbox was flooded. Urgent meeting. Board emergency. Media damage control. His phone buzzed every 5 seconds. Emails, texts, voice messages. Angry, panicked, demanding. And Weston, he turned it all off. "I'm not losing you again," he told Nora gently. "Let the world rage." But the world didn't just rage. It roared. The next day, protesters stood outside his office building. Suits with signs, former partners with cameras, people screaming about standards and image and responsibility. Security escorted them in. Inside the boardroom, the air was colder than winter. 12 men and women in tailored suits stared at Weston like he was a ghost of the man they once admired. "Weston," one of them began, trying to sound calm, "we've supported you through a lot, but this is reckless." He didn't respond. Another spoke. "You're not just putting your name at risk, you're putting all of ours at risk. A major investor pulled out this morning. $1 billion deal." The room buzzed with quiet, stifled panic. "Your relationship is making headlines every day," someone snapped. "You're the story now, not your work, not your ideas, just her." That word burned the air. Her, Nora, as if she were a scandal and not a soul. Someone finally said it out loud. We're giving you a choice. Silence fell like a knife. Choose your company or her. Weston looked at them. All of them. He looked at the walls he'd built with late nights and endless effort. The company he started with nothing but a dream. The millions in shares. The future he once thought he wanted. And then he saw Nora in his mind, holding a kitten, smiling through her tears. Brave, flawed, real. He smiled, not bitter, not angry, just free. I choose love. They stared at him in disbelief. What? I said I choose love, Weston repeated. I choose the woman who doesn't care about my bank account. The woman who helped me rescue a dog before she even knew my name. The woman with scars, a history, and a heart 10 times bigger than any of yours. Someone stood. You're throwing everything away. No, Weston said, rising too. I'm walking away. There's a difference. And with that, he took off his watch, laid it gently on the table, and left the empire he had built, just like that. The news hit within hours. Weston Hale resigns. Tech star walks away for love. A billionaire's goodbye to power. Some called him foolish. Others called him brave. But Weston didn't care. He took the money from selling his shares and used it for something else. Something new. Not a tech firm, not a sleek new app. He built a foundation, a nonprofit to help people with criminal records start over, to give people like Nora a second chance, a real one, with jobs, training, shelter, and dignity. He called it the Heart Project, in Nora's name. When he showed her the sign outside the small office building, her eyes filled with tears. You did this? For me? I did it because of you, he said softly, and for everyone like you who never got the chance. Nora didn't speak. She just stepped into his arms and cried, not from sadness, but from finally being seen. Not as someone to fix or hide or save, but as someone worth fighting for. The sun rose softly on the morning of their wedding, not over a castle, not at a luxury hotel or a five-star resort, but over a tiny animal shelter in the countryside, where hope had first touched their hearts. It was the place where Weston had found her, arms wrapped around a lost kitten. The place where broken animals were mended and two broken hearts had begun to heal. And now, it was where they would say, I do. The building had been decorated by hand. No planners, no media, no flash bulbs or gold chandeliers, just soft white lights strung from the trees, a few folding chairs borrowed from a church, and a path of flower petals, picked by the children of volunteers from the foundation Weston had built. Nora stood inside the old office, staring at herself in the mirror. Her white dress was simple, no diamonds, no corset, no designer label. But it hugged her gently, like it belonged to her soul. Her hair was curled loosely, a flower tucked behind one ear. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from how deeply this moment meant. She thought of the girl she used to be, the one who'd slept in her car, the one who'd been arrested for defending a friend, the one who thought love was for other people. And then she thought of Weston, the man who'd once ruled a tech empire, the man who could have had anyone, but chose her. She blinked back tears. Outside, the guests began to arrive. They came quietly, humbly. Some were strangers Nora didn't even recognize, until Weston whispered, "That's Mateo." First person hired through the Heart Project. Others were people who'd once walked dark paths, now smiling in clean clothes, holding their children's hands. There were friends from the clinic, old ladies from the shelter, a rescued dog limping down the aisle with a flower crown on its head, and there, waiting at the altar, stood Weston, in a tailored blue suit, no tie, hair slightly wine-blown, eyes filled with the kind of love that didn't fade. The music started, just a single violin played by a volunteer. And then Nora walked down the aisle. Everyone stood, but no one made a sound, because the love between them was louder than music, louder than applause. When she reached him, he took her hands. They didn't speak yet. They just stared at each other. Two souls who had been through war, not with fists, but with forgiveness. The officiant gave a short, quiet introduction. We are not gathered here to witness perfection. We are here to witness truth. Then it was time for the vows. Weston spoke first. His voice was low but strong. I spent my whole life building things, he said. Companies, dreams, money. But I didn't know what it meant to feel until I met you. A tear rolled down Nora's cheek. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't pretend to be something you're not. You walked into my life, covered in dog fur and rain, and somehow, everything finally made sense. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny silver ring. No diamond, just a leaf engraved on it. A symbol, he said, that even broken things grow again. Then it was her turn. She had to breathe twice before she could speak. I thought I'd never wear white, she whispered. I thought my past made me too dirty for a day like this. But you never made me feel like a mistake. You didn't save me, Weston. You saw me. And that made all the difference. Gasps could be heard in the crowd. Because for so many watching, those words meant more than just vows. They were freedom, forgiveness, the belief that even people with dark pasts could still walk in light. The officiant didn't make a big speech, just smiled and said, by the power of love and truth, I now pronounce you husband and wife. They kissed, not with fire, but with depth. And the crowd clapped softly, then louder, then with cheers. A few dogs barked happily. Some guests cried openly. Nora laughed through her tears. Weston held her face in his hands and whispered, we made it. They didn't throw rice. Instead, they handed out seed packets. Plant hope, the labels read, because this wedding wasn't about riches or beauty. It was about second chances. Later, under the setting sun, they sat together on a bench behind the shelter. No cameras, no noise, just them. Nora rested her head on Weston's shoulder. Do you regret it? She asked. Giving everything up? He kissed her forehead. I didn't give up everything. I found everything. She smiled. And in the quiet glow of the fading day, two souls who had survived shame, judgment, and pain found something stronger than headlines. Home. Love doesn't ask for perfect paths. It asks for courage. It asks for honesty. It asks for the kind of eyes that see past labels and straight into the heart. This story is a reminder to every person judged for who they once were. You are not your past. You are your growth. And you deserve to be seen, heard, and loved fully.